Hello, Professor. Here, I hope you are all good and healthy. Today, I'm gonna present my thesis, which is determinants of green purchase intention of Saudi consumer. Nowadays, globally, consumers are at higher level of environmental awareness to the extent that see environmental problem more important than important issues such as economy. They increasingly demand companies to support more green activities such as green products. So this dissertation is about green products. There are many different definitions in the literature, but in general, people agree that these products use different materials and processes and have different properties than conventional products. Um, for example, material like less harmful material, recyclable processing, like less water consumption. They use it in the protection and also products um, characterized as consume less energy. If large number of consumer purchase and demand green product, their behavior can have positive impact on the environment. Saudi Arabia is in particular need of improvement to environment because population growth puts considerable strain on housing and energy. The country faces serious environmental challenges such as water shortage, and Saudi Arabia is considered one of the world's driest region. We also have high per capita consumption of energy and waste protection. Oil are valuable for export, but increasingly used to cover domestic demand. So government pushes for green solution and have the strategic goal to curb domestic energy consumption and environmental degradation. That's why the government actively aims to support green consumption behavior. This poses the question, what are the determinants of green purchasing behavior in Saudi Arabia? Because of my interest to understand the determinant of green purchasing intention in Saudi Arabia, I reviewed the related literature on green purchasing in general in Muslim countries and in the region. I found that a large body of literature on green purchase intention in different countries, mostly based on the theory of planned behavior, which was originally developed in Western context. It appears to apply to other cultural contexts, but with different effect size. There are a small number of studies about Muslim countries. However, there are large cultural differences between, for example, Indonesia or Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. They are totally different. There are a few studies in Saudi or Arab country, but the problem, many studies are not theory-led and not published in prestigious journals. I also struck out on trying to find market research report. This is surprising because international brands are available in Saudi Arabia, which is large market with high consumer spending, but do not offer the same green product that over in other countries. Moreover, some green products have recently become available in Saudi Arabia under organic labeling, but far from widespread acceptance. In conclusion, we don't know what motivates green consumer in Saudi Arabia, and as a result, we don't know how we could expand the adoption of green products. So, in summary, is my research gaps, objectives, and my research question. The research gap that I have been identified is the factor that influence green purchase intention in Saudi Arabia are insufficiently understood. Existing research on consumer behavior in different countries and regions, including the Middle East, largely depend on the TBB as it was developed and researched in Western countries and insufficiently explore context-specific variable. The gap lead to the following research objective. the research developed a contextual framework based on the TBB and empirical approach to identify the factors that explain green purchasing intention of Saudi consumer. To achieve the goal, I identify the following question: what factors predict green purchase intention of Saudi consumer? I have approached this research in three main steps in sequential multi-method design. First, I developed a primarily research model based on the TBB and published literature to provide me with initial understanding of the research problem and guide me in data collection stage by identifying factors that I should include in interviews and questionnaire. Also identify measurement instruments. Second step is qualitative stage. In this stage, I held a small number of interviews to identify factors that may to be important factors, and literature didn't yet define it, and to be able to distinguish factors from the literature that appear to be matter in my study context and need to be included in the survey. In the quantitative stage, I developed a questionnaire survey on the factors that I identified in the qualitative stages and administered to a Saudi consumer. Then the analysis and result stage. In the following, I will report on the result for each step. First step is reviewing the literature. As I mentioned earlier, most of the literature on green purchase intention builds on the theory of planned behavior, which is also the core of my work. The theory of planned behavior explains human behavior as a result of the intention to behave in particular way. Behavioral intention is shaped by several factors. Attitude, which is whether defined as whether the person of in favor to do the action. Subjective norms, how much the person feel social pressure to do the action, and perceived behavior control, whether the person feels in control of doing the action. Each of these constructs in turn is determined by underlying belief structure, which is behavior belief, normative, and control belief. In behavior belief, a person evaluates the expected positive and negative outcome of the specific behavior, and as a result, develops positive or negative attitude toward it. How strong is the attitude decides a strength of intention. Normative beliefs, when people plan to their action, they think about what others expect of them. As a result, they may not engage in behavior even when they hold positive attitude toward it, because it doesn't align with what people around them do. However, the attention of norms imposed by others is something can depend on individual and cultural differences. Control belief, the intention to act is shaped by the decision maker's belief that she can she can actually perform the action. The more I feel control over behavior, the more strong intention. Also, green purchase intention, which is the focus of my study, means a specific kind of eco-friendly behavior that consumer perform to express their concern to environment. In this study, green purchase intention is shaped by the attitude toward green purchase green product, subjective norm relating to environment and perceive control over purchasing green products. Step 2, building the research network framework. I reviewed the literature on green purchase behavior across many different studies. I identify a large number of factors which were investigated and shown to have an impact in some study, but were ignored or shown no impact in other study. I documented these initial factors in primarily research framework. It became clear to me that I had to identify the factors that may play an important role in determining purchasing intention in Saudi context through a qualitative study first before I could design and administer a survey. Here's a list of factors that I was aware of at the beginning of my qualitative work. Step 3, refining the initial research framework through interview and thematic analysis. The purpose of the qualitative is to identify factors that related to my study context. All participants were Saudi citizens and are identified through referral sampling in my personal network. Interviews include men, women with a different stage and with international experience and without international experience, with an interest of green purchase and those who are not interested. I developed the questions in English, then I translated in Arabic. The interviews and data collected in Arabic, I developed an interview protocol and pre-tested with 4 Saudi graduate students. The pre-test lead to small modification of the interview question. Then interviews were audio recorded, questions were open-ended and prompt question. This is to let participants respond in their own words, so identify factors that related to Saudi context. And this is the example of the question. Data analysis. During the interview, I took notes on participant answer. After each interview, I listened to the record and took more detailed notes in Arabic. Then I summarized each interview, including the key statement in English. I used extensive interview summary as input data to the software package Atlas. During the analysis, I was aware of the model factors that I proposed in my research. However, I still use the inductive method using thematic analysis. So I read each interview summary and create some initial codes and compare the codes for commonalities and differences. Then finally, I classified, merged, and recorded the theme if required. For the reliability, I was supported by an Arabic fellow, PhD, who is in Atlas, and a qualitative research who spot checked my coding and see if he could or would make the same coding choice. We agreed on the code that he checked, and we found that his code aligned with my code. And here are the themes that result from the interview. First one, consumer environmental knowledge. In general, participants show low level of environmental knowledge. There are sub-themes under environmental knowledge. Several participants indicated low awareness of green products existing, lack or low information to recognize these products. Environmental concern. Given the low level of environmental knowledge, they frequently showed low interest in protecting the environment and the low willingness to purchase products in order to save the environment. And even some mentioned issues that are more important to them than protecting the environment, like financial constraint, increasing cost of living. In terms of perceived consumer effectiveness, several participants were not sure with regard to perceived consumer effectiveness, while others saw it as a law. Motivation for buying green products. Personal health was a strong motivation factor for purchasing this product. So for most consumers, purchasing green products are mostly linked to immediate benefit instead of altruistic value. Barrier to buying green products, some barrier that been mentioned in the interview are lack of availability of green products, higher price, product quality, social and cultural norms, which is this interesting things. Several participants made references to religious and cultural norms. Many indicated how the society is conservative and religious. For example, responding discussed how protecting the environment aligns with the teaching of Islam that can impact green purchase decision. Also, results show Islamic principles are important factor in Saudi Arabia, and on the other hand, they mentioned the influence and the importance of respecting and following the advice of older generation, which is maybe who may do not really concern or care about the environment. Another interesting cultural norm is the prudence of green decision. Participants were worried to be looked unwise or waste money in their friends and families' eyes and have bad judgment. Environmental responsibility. Some participants showed sense of responsibility toward protecting the environment. However, others emphasized their limited responsibility and emphasized the government role. The role of international exposure. The interviews show a pattern that appear when participants were talking about pro-environmental issues. They mentioned that travel or living abroad for education purpose affected their knowledge and environmental issue and solution. The interviews refined the framework and result for this integrated model for my research. All the factors here has been indicated as important factors by participants in the interviews. I developed my hypothesis for each of those coloration. In step 4, I designed a survey to be able to test this hypothesis, and here they are. As we see, the attitude subjective norm and perceived behavior control directly impact green intention, and behavior belief factor that grouped as factor relating to environmental knowledge and concern, factor relating personal norms will impact attitude. Overall, I expect that people with environmental concern, green product knowledge, who hold the values of seeking novelty and making independent judgment, and also who are intrinsically religious, they develop positive attitude toward green products. For normative belief, the hypotheses were built to test norm about general environmental value, environmental religious value, and norm relating to novelty seeking and prudence of the green decision. In general, I expect a supportive social network that values the protection of the environment and novelty seeking and considered good or prudent decision making and applying with the religious teaching will result in subjective norm that support green consumer behavior. For control belief, assume that an individual's perception of how easy or difficult to purchase green products and consumer perception of ability to make difference will affect perceived behavior control. And here all the hypotheses. For construct development, my research was to build the survey based on the validated measurement as found in the literature. I defined the construct of the model in English. I conducted a review of the literature on topics related to my work. I was focused on empirical research that used TBB theory and that utilized a similar variable. I used item scale for my survey that have 3 or more items that had been used and cited frequently and that have satisfactory validity and reliability. I use Likert 5-point rating scales to measure statement, except for the attitude. The participant has to select on a statement express his or her attitude on 5 points. I developed the survey in English. The construct scale for this research has been evaluated and validated by experts, the committee members. Then, based on experts' opinion and judgment, the survey has been modified. After the committee approved the item scales, the survey has been designed in English using survey design software, which is Qualtrics. Survey link has been emailed to my colleagues at Portland State University. They have participated in the pilot test and provided their feedback. Feedback from each participant was reviewed and applied to the survey questionnaire as needed. So now the survey was ready to be translated into Arabic version. The survey instrument was translated into Arabic using the back translation technique by experts in 2 languages and modified as needed. Finally, to ensure the quality of the survey translation back and forth, other bilingual researchers participated in validating the final version of a survey translation using validation tool. Then I formatted the online version, Arabic questionnaire using Qualtrics. The Arabic online version has been tested before actual launch. I emailed to a number of Arabic speakers students in Portland. They tested and gave their feedback. Then some minor changes regarding wording typo were made. For distribution, invitation to participant and a survey link was distributed through King Abdulaziz University email to the student and faculty on the March 10th. Then on March the 21st, I sent one reminder. And I closed it on April 12th. In total, I received 368 complete questionnaire. Samples were both gender, who are young, educated, Saudi, and has purchase power. These individuals who have recently bought food or personal care products and made purchase decision by themselves or with someone else. In terms of participant profile, 73% were women, and these are likely more environmentally aware than general population. Here is the construct of the definition of construct and which paper I developed from. For validity and reliability of the construct, the Pearson coefficient was run on all scales to identify irrelevant items. The result are all items are highly and significantly correlated to their constructs. All scales were also tested for reliability using Crankback alpha. The results showed highly reliable instruments that exceed the benchmark value. So we conclude that all scales are valid and reliable. Based on this, all scales have been included for future analysis, further analysis. Data analysis. This summary for the analysis that being conducted. I use SPSS version 26. To conduct the analysis, I have 4 steps. First one, or step A, has been discussed above. Step B, to test the hypothesis that I developed for my research work, I used Pearson correlation coefficient. And step C, I use linear regression to examine the direct predictive value of TPP components, which are attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavior, control, and intention, and to test the determinants of each of them. For step B and C, I did the test for both products group separately. Step D, I did the test for exploratory analysis using the mediation and moderated mediation analysis for subjective norm path. In order to test the hypothesis developed area, I use correlation coefficient. It's a popular statistic test that indicates the strength and direction of the relationship between 2 variables. Correlation coefficient can range from -1, which is a perfect inverse relationship, to 1 or +1, where we have perfect direct relationship. As we see, green intention is related to positive green attitude. Subjective norm positively affect green purchase intention. Consumer perceived behavior control positively affect green purchase intention, are all supported. For behavior belief hypothesis, the positive relationship between environmental concern and attitude also is supported, and the awareness of green products positively affect attitude, altruistic motivation positively affect attitude, and egoistic motivation positively affect attitude toward green products are all supported also. In terms of personal care norms, in terms of personal norm, the hypothesis that said novelty seeking positively affect attitude toward green product is supported. However, the hypothesis of non-independent judgment negatively affects attitude. Supported for food, not personal care. Intrinsic religiousness positively affect attitude toward green product is supported. For normative belief hypothesis, a norm relating to environmental values, norm relating to prudent decision making affect environmental subjective norm, and the notion that religious value affect the subjective norm are all supported and have positive relationship also. Norm relating to novelty seeking affects subjective norm is positively supported in regard to perceived behavior control. The coefficient for inability to purchase organic product is negative as expected, so it's supported, but there is insufficient evidence that perceived consumer effectiveness has perceived behavior control in both products, so not supported for both type of products. This is the result of regression. I use linear regression, which is a statistical method used to understand the relationship between the dependent and one or more independent variable by examining the linear regression outputs. So we can determine whether the independent variables can be considered a useful predictor of dependent variable by the value of R squared. I use regression analysis to establish with the variable predict intention to purchase organic products. So green purchase intention is modeled as a dependent variable, and the attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control variable serve as predictive variable to identify the contribution of behavior belief, which is the environmental concern, awareness, and so on, to attitude. The attitude was treated as dependent and the other variable modeled as predictive. Similarly, variable relating to norm and perceived behavior control. As we can see here, subjective norm emerged as the strongest predictor variable for green purchase intentions. Subjective norm explained 29% the variance of green purchase intention. This is followed by perceived behavior control as the second most important predictor for green purchase intention, and then attitude appeared to be the lowest predictor for green purchase intention. Regression for attitude. Egoistic benefits was found to have the highest R square, indicating that 31% of attitude toward organic food is explained by egoistic benefits, while altruistic benefits found to be responsible for 20% of the variation in consumer attitude toward organic food. Then predictive fluctuated between 5% to 2%. First table showed a regression result with regard to subjective norm. All variables were significant. The R squared for normative belief variable indicated that norms about general environmental value, prudence versus decision, has the highest R square, indicating that subjective norm can be explained by 43% of the variation that occurs in norm of environmental value, 39% of norm of prudent decision. The second table, with regard to perceived behavior control, only ability to purchase the only ability to purchase is significant and contributes to perceived behavior control, while perceived consumer effectiveness lacked statistical significance. Step D, exploratory analysis, mediation, and moderation analysis. The goal of this exploratory analysis is to dig deeper on the qualitative results and regression result that showed a social norm are very important. However, there is little support, even pushback, for green purchasing in Saudi society. Yet, over 50% of the study participants express intention to purchase green product. So, what are the characteristics of green consumer in Saudi Arabia? Are they rebels who simply careless about social norm? What could explain their high behavioral intention? Is it their independent judgment, high independent judgment? Is it preferences for novelty seeking or strong environmental concern? Are they convinced that buying green is prudent? Or how green consumers navigate the influence of others? For this part of analysis, I investigated the subjective norm. Um, I'm sorry. I investigated subject, norm, path of the model. In particular, I focus on only two aspects, environmental values and religious value for following reason. Environmental values showed to have most important predictors of both product group. And in terms of norms about religious value, because religion is central to Saudi society and touches all aspects of everyday life. Also, several participants in interviews mentioned as important influence in their buying decision. Uh, to conduct this analysis, I used the process macro to test mediation and or moderation effects, and for more complicated models like moderated mediation model. The analysis focused, this part focused on only food product because there are no enough data points for personal care products. So to conduct this analysis and create moderate mediation model, I used a process macro or highest process macro, 7 and 14, so 14 models. This is the number of the model that I use it. That uses OLS regression or logistic regression to examine for conditional indirect effects. Based on finding in similar study, this technique is suitable for my sample size. The key information is here is the index of moderated mediation, and the significance of the index tell you, do we have moderated mediation effects or not, through checking that zero is not a part of the confidence interval. Again, the key idea here is there is a little support for green purchasing in Saudi society. So do some people just not care and nevertheless buy green? This is what is gonna tell us this analysis. My goal for analysis of behavior beliefs is to understand which behavior belief could impact the effect of normative. So this is we talk about model 7 and 14. This is the model of 7 of highest process, macro process. So to understand which behavior belief could impact the effects of normative belief on subjective norm, which is this one, this path A, and which of them could impact the effect of subjective norm on intention, which is the model 14 or path B. For path A, this one, this behavior belief could be as a filter So people ignore some normative belief that don't fit with their own belief. For B path, some people simply be less influenced by what other think because they hold, for example, high independent judgment, or because they have high environmental concern, or because they novelty seeker. So they choose to do what they believe and mismatch with social norm. So I investigated independent judgment, novelty seeking, and environmental concern as moderators in both the A and B path. Another factor I investigated or I tested as a moderators for A and B path is prudence. This idea has mentioned in the interviews by several participants who were concerned that buying these products or green products may cause their important reference think about their decision as unwise or wasteful of money because it's not credible or similar to traditional products. Um, this supported me to include the construct of prudence of decision making. So people who are see that green purchasing is prudent decision may be less impacting by social norms, and prudence may also act as a filter for how subjective norms are perceived. So I tested also for both paths. Another factor or construct I tested willingness to recommend. Literature showed to have a stronger relationship with repeat purchase than intention, as expressing intention doesn't always lead to buying behavior. So also I tested and compared all the moderator analysis for intention and for willingness to recommend. Here, here the result of moderated mediation effects of independent judgment. So here, as we see here, X is the independent variable and Y is the outcome or output variables. As I mentioned before, uh, the moderated mediation index is the most important, as based on this information you conclude either you have moderated mediation or not. The conditional indirect effects show the significance in which level, if any. According to the table in A bar, this is the A bar, the upper of the table. This column tell us independent judgment has moderated the relationship between norm about environmental and religious value. As we see, it's all significant for environmental value and religious values. Independent judgment has moderated the relation between norms about environmental and religious value and subjective norm. And it's negative means as independent judgment increase, the relationship between religious and environmental value and subjective norm decrease in strength. For B path, here we have significant interaction, so we know that independent judgment is moderated the relationship between environmental and religious value and intention, not willing to recommend. The significant only for the intention, the values, environmental value intentions, and religious value and intention. For moderated mediation in A path, here, evidence of moderated mediation was found in norms about environmental value and intention, and norms about religious value and intention and willingness to recommend. This part. In BBAS, although index cross zero here, there are signals that independent judgment decrease the strength of the association between subjective norm and intention. So this is the result of the independent judgment for moderated mediated analysis. I have done the same for all other constructs, and I have the tables in index. So the result for exploratory analysis, in general, subjective norm positively predict behavior intention and willingness to recommend, and individual behavior belief shape the strengths of this relationship. A path for moderated mediation for behavior intention, so independent judgment decrease the strength of association between general and religious environment value and subjective norm, and based on the result also, environmental concern, novelty seeking, and prudence increase the strength of association between religious, environmental value, and subjective norm for ABAP, and the same effect only for prudence with environmental value has the same effect. For behavior intention, BBAT, the results show independent judgment decrease the strength of the association between subjective norm and behavior intention, and environmental concern increase the strength of association between subjective norm and behavior intention, but only for the people who hold higher in environmental concern. For BBAT, no other moderated mediation for behavior intention. So the interpretation. For ABAT, behavior belief shape how information about the community normative belief are integrated into perceptions of subjective norm. This reinterpretation minimizes conflict. So people, they are interpreting in ABAT, they are interpreting the subjective norm in their community through their lens. They have this belief causes them to understand the subjective norm of community to minimize the conflicts. In BBAT, interpretation for the BBAT, strong behavior belief push against subjective norm and weaken their influence on intention. So they are rebel. This is like they have perception of subjective norm in their community, but environment is still important for them, and they still have intention. A and B path moderated mediation for willingness to recommend. Independent judgment decrease the strength between subjective norm and willingness to recommend, but there is no moderated mediation on B path. Environmental concern increase the strength of association between, between subjective norm and willingness to recommend, but only for people who has higher level of environmental concern. Novelty seeking decrease the strength of association between subjective norm and willingness to recommend, and this effect is stronger with people high level of novelty seeking. So compared to intention, when I compare willingness to result of willingness to recommend and intention, in general, I found stronger and more constant effects for behavior intention compared to willingness to recommend. And this suggests that people find it harder for them to recommend to others than to express intention. Six, step six.
Amani,
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting, but your volume has gone down very low.
Okay.
You have to just be a little bit closer to the microphone.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Discussing and conclusion. For qualitative study, we find barrier to green purchase in Saudi Arabia, including limited environmental concern and knowledge, lack of product availability, high prices, inability to identify green products, worries about being taken advantage of against the prudent decision. Green is far from mainstream. So what explain green purchase despite this barrier? I extend and build the framework and hypothesis based on the theory of plant behavior and many new concepts in green context I added, such as prudence, independent judgment, novelty seeking. The results are TBB provide a robust theory and model for green purchase intention in Saudi Arabia. Despite its non-Western culture context, this theory being frequently tested in Eastern and Western culture, not in culture similar to my culture. Hypotheses of the research are all supported with two exceptions. First one, non-independent judgment negatively affects attitude toward green products. It's only significant for food products, not personal care products. My explanation, I believe this may attribute to the product category. People buy and use personal care product without other people noticing the purchase or consumption. However, food products are frequently prepared and be shopping and consumed with others, especially in large households that exist in Saudi Arabia. So it's I can understand the independent judgment matters more for food, not personal care products. The other exception, perceived consumer effectiveness positively affect consumer. Perceived behavior control was not confirmed also. I think it's the measurement issue based on how we define the construct. I suspect that the selected measurement of perceived behavior control was too focused on the buying behavior, perceived control on buying behavior versus behavior control over improving the environment to be able to capture belief about effectiveness of green purchasing. Regression analysis, as anticipated, results show that the consumer attitude toward green products, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control exert positive influences on the consumer intention to purchase green products. However, among the three predictors, social influence was the most important predictors of Saudi green purchase intention, followed by perceived behavior control. On the individual level or attitude, egoistic benefits were the strongest predictor for attitude toward organic products, followed by altruistic benefits. Results show that Saudi are more driven by values, in particular egoistic or personal benefit, than other factors, suggesting that in Saudi Arabia, focusing on self-interest or personal benefits can create great influence on Saudi consumer to have purchase intention for green products. The normative belief that most strongly predict subjective norm are prudent decision making and environmental value, which is prudent is a new concept that been developed in my research. Ability to purchase is the main predictors for perceived behavior control, and this result is consistent with previous finding that said facilitating conditions has a significant relationship with perceived behavior control. Here are some results demonstrate the uniqueness of the Saudi context. Egoistic benefits of green products, not altruism, must strongly predict attitude. This is different from finding in other study that identify altruism as a main predictor of green consumer. This is likely result of low level of environmental knowledge and overall concern for the environment, which was also expressed in the interviews. Subjective norm, not attitude, like other countries, most strongly predict green purchase intention. However, results contradict multiple studies that found that personal behavior belief have the strongest impact on green purchase intention. This finding support the important role of social group in shaping consumer intention in Saudi Arabia. This may be explained by the natural of collectivism attribute of Saudi society. Given this attribute or the collective nature of Saudi culture, the desire to follow the behavior of the social circle may be stronger. The key finding and discussion for moderation mediation and moderated mediation analysis interviews show that subjective norm is in the community are mostly non-green, but that some consumers are inclined to purchase green product because of their personal belief or behavior belief. This creates conflict between behavior belief and subjective norm. So how do they solve it? First, there is high conflict or rebellious. This is like people with high independent judgment. As the result, say or showed, independent judgment decrease the strength of association between general and religious value, environmental value, subjective norm, and behavior intention. So the most likely strategy is ignore subjective norms and decide in accordance with personal behavior belief, which is, I believe, to be the minority of Saudi consumer. In the other path, like low conflict strategy, that show the results of environmental concern, novelty seeking, and prudence increase the strength of the association between religious environmental value and subjective knowledge. Approved this. This is most likely the majority of Saudi who reinterrupt subjective norm so that they align with the behavior belief. This is appeared to be in line with interview data. People mentioned this as the quoted here. These people, their individual characteristic filter what they know about environment value or religious value, so they moderate the relation with the subjective norm, and they manage to rationalize the conflict away. So Saudi Arabia's unique context, in summary, Saudi Arabia's unique context, and there are challenging conditions for green marketing, including low environmental knowledge and concern. The current consumer of green products are strongly motivated by egoistic product benefits like health, personal health, or taste, subjective norms are very important and can cause conflict between individual behavior, belief, and subjective norm. In one hand, consumer with high level of independent judgment ignore subjective norm to some extent. On the other hand, however, normative belief about religious environmental value appear to be explained in way that resolve conflicts. Limitation for this research. This research tests consumer intention to purchase green products, not actual behavior. However, without intentions, behavior will never happen, and behavior theories constantly explain human behavior as a result of intention to behavior. Another limited is this research is limited to product categories. However, these are the two product groups that are widely available in Saudi Arabia. Another limited is this research focused or limited to young, well-educated and relatively wealthy university students and faculty. Yes, these people are both average, educated and wealthy people. However, given the youth of Saudi population, these are the future consumer and very large segment of the future consumer in the country. Additionally, they are the most likely people to change buying behavior on the broader scale. Another limitation, survey participants were likely more interested in green purchase than the general population. However, I think Saudi Arabia is going for change right now. My study looks at people who can act in this change, and maybe they are ahead of the curve of mainstream market, but simply these are important for the country. And yes, mostly young green consumer and interested in green purchasing in green products, but my study show how they are different from other consumer. Direction for future research. One suggestion for future research, extending the moderated mediation analysis. Another future research or suggestion is expanding to other geographical area in the region. Also expanding to different product categories. Here some contribution. My research provided insight into green purchase in an under-researched geographical area. Also showed that TBB theory is robust, but that there are regionally important factors that differ from those in other regions. Also, my research expanding the TBB by adding factors like independent judgment, prudent decision-making that, to my knowledge, have not been included in any study period to my work. My research explained consumer behavior and provided new insight into the role of subjective norm and their interaction with individual behavior belief. In terms of managerial implication, it's clear that the green product is still early in the adoption circle, but it's important to focus on improve availability, access, and make green product to received as convenient. Importance to develop recognized and trusted green labeling to respond to concern about prudent decision making. Also, it's important to focus on product benefits and emphasize egoistic benefits over altruistic benefits like taste and personal health. It's important to target consumer and market segment. As we see, consumer with high independent judgment need a special message than the mainstream market. Also, subjective norm are very important. So it's important to maximize the alignment between green products and societal values. Thank you.